buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah. Live around the world on the interwebs and, of course, across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator. It is the Michael Dukes Show. Hi, how are ya? You ready for... I don't know what the deal is. The same thing happened again today. Struggling to get the simulcast up. We finally got it. We got it. We're good. Everything's rocking and rolling. Feeling pretty good today. Broadcasting, we had those issues here last week. I guess, was it a week and a half ago, whatever it was. Where we lost the computer in the studio and did everything else and had to bypass. And, well, we're working on the new one now. Thank you so much to the members of the Common Sense Corps for helping to support the show. And by doing so, of course, they were able to help us get our new system up here. So it was through their support and sponsorship that we're able to do the things that we do each and every day, both on the radio and on the interwebs. So thank you so much to the members of the Common Sense Corps for helping out in that way. We are very appreciative of them. We got everything back up and running and hopefully glitch-free today. Both fingers crossed. Hopefully glitch-free today as we continue ahead. Well, big show today. We got a full boat of things to talk about, to discuss. We've got guests. Starting off in hour one this morning, we're going to cover some headlines, and then we're going to dive into it to see what's going on in the State House with Cathy Tilton, who is the GOP state representative from District 12 in Wasilla. She is also the House Minority Leader, and we will talk with her about what we can expect here in the waning days of the session. We are officially now less than 2 weeks away from the end of this year's session, and we'll see what happens here. We'll get the full rundown from her in hour one. Then in hour two, we're going to be diving into it directly and straight away with State Senator Robb Myers, who I like to think of him as kind of he's kind of that quiet, plotting behind the scenes kind of guy. I mean, he's always so nice and gentle, and he doesn't get real wrapped up and excited, but he's a thinker. He's always in the background there, putting some good stuff together, and always has some great stuff when he talks on the floor and everything else. But he's not, he's not bombastic. He's not. Oh man, I love talking to him. It's good. It's good. Yeah, I did a lot of work yesterday. I said I had no idea what today's show was going to be, and boom, I made it happen. It was. Oh, man, it's just so crazy. But we got some headlines here this morning that we are going to dive into, and there is some crazy stuff going on around the state of Alaska that we're going to talk about, and we're going to dive into that first things first. So appreciate you coming on and joining us. Don't forget that you can join us, as always. You can join us in the chat room. If you would like to, if you'd like to be part of it, we'd love to hear what you guys have to say this morning in the chat room. Feel free to come on board and join us. It's on Facebook at facebook.com/Michael Dukes Show, YouTube.com/Michael Duke Show, and you can find it over there and join us on that, or on YouTube, or on Twitch. Anyway, you could join all the folks who are hanging out with us there and participate on the program in that way. You can always also, by the way, send me an email if you'd like to comment on something but don't want to have your voice being heard or whatever at in my email at Michael Duke Show, me at MichaelDukeShow.com, me@MichaelDukeShow.com. Okay, so let's talk about some of the headlines here, shall we, this morning? A couple of things caught my attention. I guess first and foremost, I often say, as goes Anchorage, so goes the rest of the state, right? I mean, Anchorage is the largest like it or not, love Anchorage or hate Anchorage or whatever, but it's the largest community in the state. A lot of things are driven from there. And we've been watching some stuff play out in Anchorage that is just, it is like the battle royale over the heart and soul of the city of Anchorage over the last couple of years, including, the meltdown of Mayor Berkowitz with the butt shot and the crazy lady and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, some of the backlash. We've seen some of the people and some of the attempted power grabs during the COVID lockdown by the Assembly. That led to the rise of Mayor Dave Bronson, who was supported by a big chunk of Anchorage, and what has become one of the most contentious battles between an elected legislative body, which is the Municipal Assembly, and the administration of Dave Bronson there in the city of Anchorage. And so now we're seeing some of these things come to light, and this is kind of shocking to me. Must Read Alaska, who's been following this pretty closely, and I will note that the ADN has not been reporting on this part of it at all. I could not find the story in the ADN, and I looked because I was like, well, really, is the ADN talking about this at all? I'm just curious. The story comes out that the Assembly is now trying to create a new process by which they can remove the mayor that has been duly elected by the people. Now, there's been some stories in the ADN about how they're battling it out between the two bodies, that the mayor has been doing some vetoes, the battle over city spending, that kind of stuff. But nobody else has really touched on this. Suzanne Downing talking about an ordinance that's been offered by Anchorage Assembly Vice Chairman Chris Constant, who is also a candidate for Congress, I'll have you know. He has moved for a new section of city code that would give broad authority and a legal path to remove the mayor from office. It's Ordinance 2022-60, which will be introduced at the May 10th meeting. It has a list of offenses that, if the mayor breaches any of these offenses, can lead to the removal by a vote of a simple 2/3 vote of the Assembly. Now, that could include the acceptance of cash gifts from one doing business in the muni, perjury, falsification of records, filing false reports, nepotism, making personal use of municipal or school district property, destruction of public property, official oppression, actual or attempted official misconduct, ordering a municipal employee or contract employee to undertake an unlawful act or substantial breach of statutory code or charter-imposed duty. Now, this appears to, according to Must Read, appears to have been written by a former official of the Berkowitz administration, Bill Falsey, who is an additional contract lawyer for the Anchorage Assembly. They have their own legal department, but apparently they've been contracting Bill Falsey on the outside for more work. But the removal procedures would begin with the accusation that would be delivered to a municipal clerk, who is also has a very contentious relationship with the mayor's office, works exclusively for the Assembly. The accusation would need only to have a majority of the Assembly and must have specific actions against the public trust or the breach of the public trust. It would then go to the attorney or the special counsel, again, in this case, Falsey, and if found sufficient, the Assembly would employ a hearing officer to conduct an inquisition. Upon the recommendation of the hearing officer to remove or not remove the mayor, the assembly could vote to remove the mayor. He would then have the ability to challenge the ruling in Superior Court, but in the meantime, the assembly could install its own mayor 7 days after the assembly decision, unless the judge issues some kind of stay. The assembly says this action would not constitute irreparable harm, and says the mayor's seat may still be temporarily filled pending the outcome of the case, even if the judge issues a stay. Now, if this doesn't seem like a power grab, I mean, this is a dutifully elected official, elected by the people, and they're finding this. I mean, what? This is there's already ways you can do this, recall if there's criminal neglect or corruption or things like, these things can already happen, but this is what they're attempting to do. I mean, wow. I mean, this is some crazy stuff. But we'll see. We'll see what. But again, remember, only reason I'm bringing this up because most of you don't care. It's like, I don't live in Anchorage, and what do I care? Well, because as goes Anchorage, my friend, so goes the rest of the state. In the legislature yesterday, there was a vote to make the permanent fund dividend a 50-50 split permanent. They could have done that. That was the vote. They had a 9-9. They had a 9-9 vote going on because Senator von Imhoff is excused, and apparently this amendment, which has been offered by Roger Holland, would have taken the wording in SB 199 where they would have taken that 50-50 split. It would have just been for this year, and then it goes to 25-75 until they come up with $800 million in revenue. This would have made the 50-50 split permanent year after year. Casting the critical vote was Senator Josh Revak, who was running for Congress, by the way. I mean, he apparently showed up because there was another. I mean, this is the thing. Josh Revak, boom. Now, he's been missing. Apparently, there was some discussion on this back in April where he's barely been seen in Juneau since the death of Congressman Young. He showed up a couple times to make comments, and showed up on the Senate floor to make a memoriam to Congress Young and everything else. But it pretty much for most of April, Peter Micciche has been chairing the Natural Resources Committee, which is Revak's committee. He's had a hard time cobbling together a quorum sometimes to conduct business, and he has been all over the state running for Congress. Now, the question is he really raising money to run for Congress, or is he raising money for his state race? Because he's entered in both races. He's a declared candidate for both seats, but you can't really look at it's illegal for you to raise money while the legislature's in session as a legislator, but it's lawful if you're running for a federal seat. But really, are you doing the work of the people if you're out there campaigning almost full time for the deal? And this failed vote said immediately, says as soon as he did this failed vote where he voted against the 50-50 split, he immediately walked down the hill to a fundraiser at the Crystal Saloon in the Capitol. I mean, this is. Yesterday, Peter Micciche also delayed the vote on the budget so that Josh Revak could campaign this weekend, and he also delayed the girls in sports bill so Revak could be there to vote for it as well. Some of the commentary I'm getting out of the legislature is it seems like the entire leadership, with the exception of Mia Costello, has been doing some covering for Josh Revak on this thing so he can go out there and do all this stuff. I mean, I'm just wow. Wow. I just remember this is Josh Revak, the same guy who said, why would we give people a $10,000 dividend if the formula said 10,000, why would we do that? And I'm like, because the government's getting 10,000? Why? I mean, it's a rising tide floats all boats. He was just aghast that people should receive that amount of money from their fair share of the resources. I still remember how shocked I was when he said that in the interview that I had him on. But, don't worry. This guy, he's going to be the congressman for all Alaska and take care of you. I mean, he's going to do it. Promise. Oh, all right. We're up against the break. We got to go. So we're going to take it real quick, and we're going to be back. Cathy Tilton is going to be our guest. We're going to be talking with her about what is happening in the legislature and what we can expect for the final waning days of this session. That's all directly ahead. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we are in the break right now. We're going to be talking with Cathy Tilton here in just a hot moment, and we appreciate you guys coming in and being part of it today. Feeling pretty good. Back to kind of, I think I got everything back on track here with this whole PC situation and everything. And I do want to say a special thank you to the members of the Common Sense Corps. These guys right here. And you could be part of that too, by the way. These guys right here helped me get back on track. Had to replace some equipment, and after PC corruption, failure, whatever, these are the guys that helped make it all happen. And I really appreciate all the members of the Corps that helped bring this to pass. So thank you so much for doing so. Let me get, I suppose before we get too far along here, I should get Cathy Tilton on the line just to make sure, I don't want to leave anything to the last minute today. Man, it was a hot mess yesterday, or this morning, when we first got started. I had to restart the broadcast like 3 or 4 times before Facebook would pick up and do what it needed to do. So let's jump over here to see if we can get Cathy on the line.
Good morning.
Good morning, young lady. How are you doing this morning?
I am doing great.
Good. You all ready to rock and roll?
I am.
Okay, good. Well, let me make sure that I got all the bells and whistles put together and all my ducks in a row. I think I do. So
Perfect.
Enjoy my virtual coffee and donuts in the green room, and we'll be right back to you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Cathy Tilton on the line with us. So we're already ahead of the game. Look at that. We've already got that. We're already ahead of the game on that. Let me go back and read some of the comments. Oh, I don't have time to read Herman's comment. That's like 12 pages or something there. All right, let me go back over here. If the council can remove the person elected, then the mayor should be able to sue. Well, he should be able to, and he is able to fight it in Superior Court. The problem is that if they vote, they essentially can then fill his position with somebody temporary, even if he gets a stay, according to the article. Provided it applies to the assembly as well. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm opposed. Somehow I have my doubts. I'm sure there is a process for removal, but again, here's the thing: we're talking about somebody who's been lawfully elected by all the citizens of the community. Do you really want the assembly making that decision? Shouldn't the voters make that decision? I mean, there's already a recall. There's already, if it's criminal, they could do. There's plenty of options out there. But a simple 2/3 majority vote of the assembly can then suddenly reverse what all the elected officials, what all the electorate had decided on that? Yeah. According to the article, Revak immediately left the Senate chambers after that and went to a congressional fund. Yeah, I know. I mean, how did she write it? He walked down the hill. Revak headed out of the Senate chambers immediately after the vote, walked down the hill from the Capitol to the Crystal Saloon, where he is holding a fundraiser for his congressional bid. So, come on out. He's all, man, you can't make this stuff up. Just can't make this stuff up. Constant is such a foul-mouthed liberal tool. Well, yes. All right. Going back here. Scrolling back is... wow, yeah, okay. You guys are... Okay, good morning. All right, I made it to the beginning of the comments. There's nothing super earth-shattering on that. Will he be condemned, Revak, or will he be protected because he's a registered Republican? Well, I mean, the Republican Party's done such a bang-up job. Even when they have condemned somebody, it doesn't really seem to do anything, you know? I mean, that's wow. I wonder how that provision for removing the mayor mixes with the "you have a special election in case of a vacancy" provision of the city charter. You mean the one that they ignored? The one that they ignored while they had Austin Quinn Davidson's seat empty while she was filling the mayoral? I mean, that one? Yeah, it's a crazy, crazy world. Let's get into it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Okay. Well, that was annoying. Sorry. That's my little warning that we're coming back from break, but apparently it was way too late at that point because we were already back from break. All right, we'll have to fix that here today. Anyway, welcome back to the program. Thanks for coming in and joining us. It is the Michael Duke Show. We're diving into the state business now. We're going to find out what's been happening over in the State House. Joining us this morning on the telephone to discuss all things related to the State House is Cathy Tilton, who's a GOP state rep for District 12 in Wasilla. She's also the House Minority Leader, and she joins us now for further discussions on everything that's going on. Good morning there, lady. How are you doing?
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, everyone. I'm doing pretty good, all things considered.
All things considered. I didn't get to the story in my headlines, but, I had to laugh this morning when the big headline out of the paper, and in fact, it was even in the AP for the statewide news, was that the Alaska House passes a bill suspending taxes on motor fuel for a year, which... okay, great. It's 8 cents a gallon. They're going to suspend it for a year. Couldn't get a dividend, but at least we got something, I guess. This is our consolation prize or something, Again, not that I'm complaining about a cut of any taxes of any kind, but at some point I got to scratch my head and say, we can't get a full PFD, but 8 cents a gallon, boy, we can do that. 36-2 said, okay, we can do that.
Yeah, Michael, I hear you on that. The thing was that bill actually came across as a tax, as a gas tax increase.
Oh, yeah. No, it was gutted out. I thought that was the interesting part, was that you're supposed to double the tax to 16 cents
right,
and the surcharge and everything else, and it got gutted out, and now it's going to be a suspension for a year.
Yeah. Yep.
That's good. Don't get me wrong. But I found the irony of it pretty thick that here it is,
I'm right there beside you. I mean, I just, we have all the funds that we need. We have more money coming in, and it wouldn't matter if we didn't have more money coming in. A statutory dividend is what is owed to the people of Alaska. So why? That's all you can just look and go, why not? The House wanted in their budget to do a throw it at the wall and see what sticks dividend, and add something that they wanted to call some kind of energy, whatever they wanted to call it. They didn't want to call it a dividend. Didn't make sense whatsoever. But like you said, since we took your dividend, we're going to give you just this little bitty something to be happy about.
It's like stealing all your lunch money and say, here, kid, here's a stick of gum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Taking your lunch money and your lunch and leaving you with a little sticker.
Yeah. Here you go. Here's a stick of juicy fruit. Enjoy that. You won't be hungry after this. I mean, it's going to be fine.
Right.
It's pretty crazy. Cathy, I want to kind of get your take on everything that's going on and what you expect to happen in the next 2 weeks, but I've got to start off with this. House Finance on Tuesday reported its capital budget, and we are now up to $1.4 billion in supplemental budget for fiscal year 22, raising the overall spend for this year's budget, which everybody's like, oh, look, we did such a great job. It's only $4.6 billion. Now it's up to $6 billion, $1.4 billion in supplemental alone for its capital budget. I mean, I got to talk to me here. What are you seeing?
Fascinating, right? That's all I can go. Wow.
Fascinating. That's not the word that I use. I can't use the word that I would use for it on the air.
I can't either on the radio, so I have to go with something polite. But just absolutely amazing. I think there's an interesting dynamics going on between the co-chairs in both houses and both bodies, and I'm not sure. Normally I have a pretty good read of what's going on, but it sounds like to me, and I spent most of the night reading the Senate's budget because it's a turducken. It has everything all in one: capital, supplemental,
omnibus,
operating.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty omnibus. I read through that last night, and then it seems to me that the House is just trying to get something over the line before the Senate comes over, because I think that if they don't have anything, they're afraid that the Senate's just gonna send theirs over and leave town, and then there wouldn't be any kind of, the House wouldn't have any say. So the budget they're putting together, and I'm not making any excuses for them, it's absolutely absurd, but I believe what they're trying to do is put something together so they can get it over to the other side.
The Senate bill was already, the $600 million increase, $600 million supplemental already. So now we're up to over $1.4 billion. We've got, the words that came out of the Senate Finance co-chair's mouth, Stedman, was essentially, after we do all this, we still have $4.4 billion to play with. We can't get a full PFD.
I know. I was just going to say, well, you have what? You have money to play with? But
yeah.
I think you've forgotten the people.
Yeah.
The most important thing.
Yeah, we can't spend another $900 million to pay a full PFD in this state, but you're going to have a $4.5 billion surplus to do with that you want. And guarantee you that money is not going into the CBR, where it becomes partially out of reach and empowers the minority in any way. This money is going to be spent on whatever pet project they feel like. So much for fiscal restraint. They were all about fiscal restraint at the beginning of the session, and now it's like sailors with gallons of grog everywhere.
Yeah, I think fiscal restraint went out the window quite a while ago. So that's
Well, I always had to laugh. I always had to laugh at politicians that said something about, "Oh, we've got to show some fiscal restraint," and these are the same people that were in charge during the teens when we were spending, 16, 17, $18 billion out of savings. Yeah, they got some fiscal restraint going on. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sure. Right. You've got 4 point whatever billion dollars left over, and you've got money to forward fund education, and you've got everything under the sun, and all the excuses of why you can't do a full statutory dividend, and it just doesn't make any sense. When we saw it yesterday in the Senate, when they put, they had SB, what is it, 119 or
199, yeah,
199, and SB 199, and we saw the amendment, with the statutory dividend. That one didn't pass. And then even trying to do a little bit more of a compromise where, okay, let's meet in the middle so that we can get a fiscal plan going here. And you can't get that. So there's no room in there for having a discussion about a long-term fiscal plan for the state of Alaska. I've continued over and over and over again to tell the Speaker of the House that the components of the fiscal plan, especially the constitutional spending limit, is the number one priority of the minority, but it just goes like nowhere.
Yeah, no, it's a hot mess, and I don't know what's going to happen here as we get closer to the end of the session. I mean, we're pretty close now, but as we wind up, I guess, the remaining days of the session, as you said, the House is trying to get their final pieces out before the Senate does. The Senate rolled this whole thing up, and you just mentioned it yesterday. Mike Shower mentioned it, into an omnibus bill, which people don't really know what that means. It means instead of having a separate budget for the operating budget and for the capital budget and for the supplemental budget, instead they wrap it all up into one big, like you said, turducken, one big package, and so it becomes extremely hard to try and separate these things out and figure it out. And you can't vote for one without voting for them all. You couldn't vote for an operating budget or a capital budget without voting for the operating budget or the supplemental or anything else. I mean, it is crazy stuff.
And I'm going to just say, Michael, that when you look at the capital budget, and of course I'm Matt Sue and a little bit of back into Anchorage, but I got to tell you, if you want to look at any, you talk about all this extra spend, if you want to look at any balance in that spend and where it's going across this great state of ours, it's not balanced. I'll tell you that. We got a report from Finance that we asked for on the capital board portion, and the capital portion going to the Matt Sue of what they have is less than 2%.
Yeah, so there's not a whole lot of equitability. Is that what you're saying? I mean, the second largest
that's
region,
what I'm saying.
second largest region in the state, and we still can't get what we need out of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cathy Tilton is our guest, GOP state rep for District 12. She's the House Minority Leader as well. All right, so give us some ideas here as we're under 2 weeks. Yesterday was the 2-week mark. We're about to close out this session. What is going to happen here? Explain to people. Give us some inside baseball here. What are we going to be doing over the next 13 days before the end of this session?
Oh, well, over the next 13 days, I think that the House Finance is going to scramble to get a capital budget over to the Senate. The Senate is going to be doing the amendments I've heard on their omnibus bill on Monday. Trying to get that over to the House. The House is going to be doing some bills that aren't necessary, and I don't even know why we're doing them because they're House bills and they're not going to go further than that. But there's going to be probably lots of discussion about how do we get to this end game and get all of the votes that are needed. And I think that the co-chairs probably feel like they crafted a budget that they don't have to worry too much about getting different votes, but I think they're wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, and this is the thing. I mean, this is all, at this point, as we unpack everything that's happened over this last session, it can all go back to that original formation of the majority-minority when we thought we were going to be running the ship, at the beginning of the session, and all of a sudden the whole thing, all the wheels come off the bus. And, we had Merrick, and then we had Rasmussen, and then we'd got Thompson, and, all these people kind of jumped ship, and all of a sudden the game totally changed. Now, do you think that this election cycle is going to make a difference in that? I mean, I just got to know.
I would like to say yes, Michael, but I am with all the changes that we'll be facing this election cycle. I can't confidently say that it's going to change the people who made their decisions to caucus with the Democrats. I would love to say yes. And maybe a month or two ago, I might have felt more confident about that, but I'm not feeling as confident. Although I will say that we have got some seats that have opened up, and there is a lot of opportunity to pick up some seats that we didn't have before. And what we know is that we have to get to a 23, 24 at least. It needs to be no doubt in our minds when we come back next time, God willing, that
right.
I'm elected. But
it's got to be a bulletproof majority, not just a hair thin majority. It's got to be bulletproof so that one or two people, if they peel off.
Yeah.
You mentioned the 2% out of the capital budget for the Matsu. Charlie Pierce in the chat room just mentioned the peninsula got zero. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, so where's all this money going? What's going on? We've got so many needs in so many different areas of Alaska, and it just seems like there's an inequitability built into this whole thing, whether we're talking about the PFD or the capital budget or anything else. We'd like to see a reduction in spending, but if you're going to spend the capital budget, at least there should be some equitability baked into it.
100% agree with you that I absolutely would love to see reduction. And the interesting thing is that I think so we feel like we're flush with money, and we're not, because first off, that money had to come from somewhere, and it's going to come from someone's pocket eventually.
Right.
Maybe not today, but it does come from someone's pocket. And the interesting thing is that, I think we forget that we should be funding the things we already own and taking care of the stuff we already have to deal with, taking care of our needs over our wants. And cruising through this budget, I found a lot of wants that weren't necessarily high priority needs.
Well, right, exactly. I mean, the capital budget, we were just talking the other day about the various pots around the state, the underfunded and the unfunded deferred maintenance around the state. The city of, or the borough of Fairbanks has, almost has $250 million. Down in Anchorage, it's almost $750 million. And then somebody pointed out that the state's unfunded deferred maintenance is upwards of it's in the billions of dollars, and yet we're going to go ahead and we'll be funding all these nice to have projects instead of taking care of the stuff we already got.
Take care of the people. Take care of the stuff you already got.
Yeah, exactly. Cathy Tilton is our guest. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about what her priorities are going to be moving into the next few days of the session, and we'll also talk about some of the more contentious things. And again, going back to that majority as well, it'll all be part of our discussion. That's coming up here. The Michael Duke Show continues. Don't forget, you can always check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. If you want to be part of the discussion, we got about 60, 70 people in the chat room right now hanging out with us. Come on in and let's have a conversation. We'll be back with more right after this. Your home for common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
At what point does it seem to be just punitive, Cathy? I mean, you got the most populous area and fastest growing region of the state, the Mat-Su, getting 2% of the capital budget. You've got of course, it's also the most conservative area of the state, probably tied neck and neck with the peninsula for being most conservative. And these two places got 2% and 0% of the capital budget. At what point do you just go, that just seems punitive?
When they first put it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Right away.
Yeah.
I absolutely. And, again, it goes back to the voices of even the voices of the minority. It's a really different change from when the Democrats were in the minority, to have their voices heard. It was just about, well, what projects do you want? We're just going to throw some money at it because, they want to spend more. It's a different conversation with the minority now, because we don't want more. We don't want more money spent. We want to have less money spent. We want to do things like have the spending limit come to the floor, the components of a long-term fiscal plan, looking at, the things that I've asked the speaker for, or are just that, the components of the long-term fiscal plan, especially the spending limit. And if we can't go there, I don't see why we can't. But if we can't go there, then let's look at the crime bills, because we all know that there's a problem with domestic violence and sexual assault and trafficking. And there's some good bills sitting there, and they're not moving in the House.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to pass anything, I guess that would be the thing to pass. But again, my question goes back to, man, should we really be passing more bills, or should we be repealing some stuff at this point?
No, well, yeah, and that's exactly what I said when I was talking on the floor a few weeks, maybe it was a week ago, about the fact that I don't know if anybody heard this, but I talked about committee bills, and that there was a lot of committee bills filed this year, and that the filing of committee bills didn't, that there is a cutoff where we can't file personal legislation, and I'm good with that. And unfortunately, I'm starting to think we need to limit legislation on legislators. And like I said on the floor, when I said that, I said, and in my district, I think they'd be pretty happy if you were actually only taking away, taking away legislation and taking away rules and regulations and removing them. I think I signed a co-sponsored on a bill maybe 2 sessions ago that would have done that.
Yeah. Well, it's frustrating to watch. And of course, I'm always hopeful, especially after redistricting, because usually the entirety of the legislature is up for re-election. And this is the case this year. There's only one seat, only one Senate seat that's not up for re-election. But I mean, I'm always hopeful that something is going to happen, but I can only go so many years of, this time it'll be it. No, this time it'll be it. No, this time it'll be it. I just don't know, which leads to the question, which I don't know if we'll have enough time to get into on the radio, but it leads to the question of the Constitutional Convention. Because I mean, quickly here, is that the only way we're really going to get something done, in your opinion?
Unfortunately, it's a reality. And, as on the end of my talk regarding the budget, that's what I said. I said, it should be no wonder to the people sitting here in this room why the people will rise up and vote for a constitutional convention. We can't give them a full dividend, a statutory dividend. And not only will we not give them a statutory dividend, many of you here in this room refuse to do that. Not only that, you don't want to talk about what is it going to look like then to do some kind of a revision. Send it to the people, because the people need to have a voice in this and let them have a say. And so there's just no will to do any of that. So it might be the only way.
Yeah. Well, it's again, I still have some concerns about the con, but I'm coming to believe at this point that the legislature is, as a whole, is just inept, and it's not going to do anything. Nothing is going to change. So it's going to be frustrating for sure.
And I'm right there with you. I'm a little concerned too, but this is the first year in all the years that I've been voting that I would be lean towards being yes.
All right. Cathy Tilton is our guest. If you would do me a favor, folks, 3 shares this morning so far, only 3. So we got about 50 people in the 60 people in the Facebook chat. If you would like and share this video, if you would like and follow the show page and do all that stuff, that would help us out. Cathy, hold the line. We're about to jump back into it. We're 15 seconds out. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share, hit the subscribe bell, ring the bell on YouTube, then share from YouTube as well. Do it all. Let's get into it. Here we go. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. All right, Cathy Tilton is our guest, and we are continuing to discuss what's going to be happening in the legislative session. I want to get her priorities here, figure out what she's going to be focusing on here in the waning days. But before we do that, I guess we should talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's happened recently and some of the more contentious issues. And, of course, it all comes back to the minority majority split. How do we make that happen? Of course, one of the problems early on was that there was a lot of contention inside the Republican caucus to begin with, And that kind of came to the head here recently with the removal of David Eastman from the caucus. And it wasn't a specific thing. It was like the final straw that broke the camel's back thing. And I know that there was a lot of angst and a lot of vitriol that's been kind of flung in that direction. But the bottom line is that at some point everybody has to kind of kumbaya and come together a little bit to work together. And even if you all agree, you've got to kind of you got to work with people. You can't lone wolf it and expect to get anything done. And in fact, it can be detrimental, as we saw during the formation of the caucuses. So, Cathy, do you want to give you a minute here to address that, so you can give your say and say something to all the people out there? Some of them are obviously outraged by it. Other people are breathing a sigh of relief. What's give me the take on it here.
Sure, I have. I think I did a little press conference, and Representative Eastman is certainly able to represent his constituency, however and in whatever manner that he feels is the right way to represent them. But like you said, there has to be a willingness to work with other people within your caucus, and there was not any kind of a planned idea of this happening, but I think that it just came to a head with many of the members, and we like you said, maybe we can't point to one specific thing at this particular point in time, especially since we don't talk about what we talk about in the caucus meetings. But Representative Eastman was in the meeting. He was able to address all of the members and their concerns, and he did have that opportunity. And like you say, some people are outraged, and I can understand that, and some people are relieved, and I can understand that as well.
And I think it comes back to, again, and I've said this, and I'll keep saying it just so for clarification. I mean, I appreciate Eastman's philosophy and his beliefs and what he does. I agree with probably 85% of the positions that he has taken. It's just sometimes it matters how you get to things. It's not necessarily always, we all may be going to the same destination, but it's the journey that, to take us there, the way that we do things. And it just seems like, sometimes the scorched earth policy or the demagoguery is the intent instead of actually getting to the goal, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yep. 100% agree with that.
And that's gonna be challenging as we come back into it after this next election cycle, because again, hugely popular, 75% of the vote in the Mat-Su. I don't know that anything is going to change on that, but that's going to make it challenging again to come back with after the election, depending on how many people are there. Like you said, you need a 23 or 24 person or legislator majority to really make things happen.
Sure, we've sat here and we've watching this. Louise is a speaker right now with the 21 majority. That's a really difficult place to be in any manner, and with anybody. I mean, with any group of people, you need to have more people on board than that. And a lot of the times where there's been nothing happening in the House, I believe, is just because Louise knew she didn't have the vote sitting there. And so, we're like through the time when we didn't go to the floor because, it was couched as the masking issue, but it really was an issue if she didn't have enough members for the vote.
No, that was exactly it. I mean, they could have had a quorum, but because they didn't have the right quorum, it was, now it's a masking issue. And of course, the second that they have enough for their right quorum, the masking issue disappears and it becomes voluntary again.
Yeah, I just thought it was amazing that she could read the stars and knew that next Monday there would be no more COVID.
Exactly. All right, well, we got about 4.5 minutes here. Let's talk about your priorities for the final days of the session. What are you going to be fighting for? What are we going to be pushing for? What can people expect to see coming out of the House here over the next 2 weeks?
Sure. I think that I can't speak for the entire minority, but the majority of our minority will be pushing for a statutory dividend for the people of the state of Alaska. There's no reason why we shouldn't have that. We'll be pushing for a constitutional spending limit. We'll be pushing for those components that lie within the fiscal plan working group, and we'll be pushing for definitely no taxation. There's no need to, have taxes. There's no need to own the taxes. And even when it came to an 8-cent per gallon increase, I think that, again, it wasn't it wasn't a full dividend, and it really was a little bit of an insult actually to say, well, this is what we're going to give you, but what we were going to get was better than what was in the bill, so
Right.
that was a good thing.
Right.
We are going to, as I said, I think that some of the crime bills are really important to some of the people across the state of Alaska, but the one thing that I'm really excited about is the elections integrity bill that Senator Shower is working on, and that I have high hopes that that is something that we can all get behind, because I think is bringing back some kind of doing something on that. It's not going to be what everybody wants and everybody hoped for and dreamed for with everything we've ever wanted, but we have to do something and get started on putting some faith back in elections.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. People are concerned, and while I'm not on the bandwagon that everything that everything is to blame on election problems, I do agree that there is some issues with security, integrity, verification, those kind of things, and this is not just a 2020 problem. This has been going on since well before then, and these are issues that needs to be addressed. I mean, the 113% of voter roll issue is definitely, one of those top priorities. And the fact that we're we're mailing out ballots to everybody, it's just shown exactly how overbloated those rolls are.
And absolutely. And so, that, and then personally, I'm going to be working on trying to help people to understand ranked choice voting, not to love ranked choice voting and not to want to keep ranked choice voting. Absolutely not. But at least so that people will go out and exercise the right to vote. Because if we don't do that, because we hate what happened with ballot measure 2, and I hate it too, but we have to. The more you can learn about it, the more comfortable you can be, so that you can teach your neighbors and people. If we don't go vote because we don't like it, then we don't help ourselves.
Well, I got to say that it's going to be interesting to watch what happens. I think this is going to be one of the most disastrous elections, because I think people they have no idea. They have no clue what's coming. I talk to people and say, well, yeah, you've got this one, and then on the 16th you've got both a special primary and a ranked choice, and they're like, well, what do you mean? And then you start to explain it, and they go, what? I mean, they just, it's going to be a complete and total shock to people. So
it really is, with redistricting, which is also very confusing. Redistricting with ranked choice voting, and then add the special election that we're adding into that. It's all very, very confusing. So
all right,
do my best to help educate people. One thing I do want to add is that today is National Day of Prayer.
Okay.
And you will see some of your legislators will be out, and they will be praying for the preborn, praying for the media, praying for the state leadership and all that. So please join us.
Cathy Tilton, thank you so much, folks. We are out of time. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. All right, Cathy. I wanted to give you the floor there. Sorry, I was up against the hard break there, but I want to give you the floor for the last couple of minutes here. Anything else you got that we didn't touch on that you wanted to touch on real quick?
No, the only thing I wanted to touch on is that people who are looking at the gubernatorial race, there is going to be the Matsu Republican women are holding a forum, and I don't have a dog in that fight, but we all do actually. So I would encourage people to look into that, to hear the Republican people who are running for that particular seat. I know there's been some questionnaires on the replacement of Congressman Young's seat. I don't know if there's been any forums as such, but there's a lot of things to make some decisions on, and those are going to affect what our long-term future is going to look like. And I just would encourage people to get as informed as they can.
Yeah, no, we need the education is something that's important. I'll be honest with you, I am shocked that the state has not undertaken an education campaign to educate people on this. I mean, when Funumi was in front of the thing when they first announced when they were going to send out the ballots and everything, and somebody asked that, she's like, well, we put together a website and we put together a mailer. And I'm like, but first of all, I never got the mailer. I saw them because people would send me pictures of them, but I never got a mailer that talked about it. And how am I going to know that there's a change if I'm not really paying attention and plugged in? How am I going to go find your website? Why has there not been $1 million spent of all the monies that you could spend? Spending $1 million to educate people on how the ranked choice voting system worked seems to me would be a pretty good use of the state's money at this point.
It would be one of the better uses of the state's money, better than a lot of the other things we're spending money on right now.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's insane. It's insane that we can't. The state is not saying, here's what's coming. This ballot is this ballot. When you come to the 16th, it's going to be even more confusing because you're going to have the jungle primary and ranked choice on the same ballot. And then you're going to have just ranked choice in November. I mean, nobody's explaining this at all, or even, really kind of laying out what ranked choice is. And like I said, I talk to regular people who are not super voters, who are not listening to this show, and they go, what? What do you mean? I mean, they have no idea.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's going to be incumbent upon the people who are the candidates to go out and to educate as best as they can. I know what I'm doing is I'm offering to talk and to set up things with community councils, churches, whoever wants to listen. Plus, when I'm going door to door, I'm going to just, ask people if they, do they know? Do they understand? Do they know?
Right.
Do they get it? I don't want to insult anybody, but we do need to be informed on it, because if we're not informed, and again, most of my voters in my district voted no. I'm guessing there isn't very many that voted for it. So if you didn't vote for it, you probably don't really want to know how it works, quite honestly.
Right. Well, but I mean, I've met people who voted for it thinking it was something totally different than what it actually was.
Oh,
you know what I mean? I was like, wait, I thought this was just to eliminate dark money. No, it wasn't. Sorry.
No, this was paid for with dark money.
Exactly. That was the irony of it. All right. Well, Cathy Tilton, thank you so much for taking time out this morning and coming on board. We appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. Anytime.
Thank you so much. All right. So Cathy Tilton, Cathy Tilton, our guest here on the program for now. We're about to jump into it here in a moment with Robb Myers, who is our guest on the program. I've got to go over here and make sure that I've got, let's see. I just realized, I think I got his phone number. I think I got his phone number in here. Hey, look at that. I think I do. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Oh, morning, Michael. Doing okay so far.
Good. All right. You're a little bit tin canny. Are you on a speaker, or you on something else?
I'm on a headset. Let me take that off and see what happens.
Okay. All right. Sorry. It's a little.
Is that any better?
Oh, that's a lot better. Yeah. No, you sounded like you were in a bathroom there for a minute. Which is fine, I guess, if that's how you want to do things. We don't judge around here.
Well, I have done that with you once before because I was avoiding my kids. But
well, that's good. All right, we're going to jump into this here in just a minute, Robb. So if you want to hold the line, we'll be back to you in a minute, and we can kick things off. So hold the line here. Robb Myers, our guest, GOP State Senator from District B. We're going to get the full rundown from yesterday, not only on the vote, on the full PFD, on the 50-50 PFD, on the overall tone and what was happening on the floor with the discussion of SB 199 and the budget, the capital budget. I mean, we got a lot of stuff to unpack here. And as I said, Robb Myers is usually one of the quiet ones, but you listen when he talks because he's a pretty sharp operator. And so we'll get some insight from him here in just a moment on that. Folks, if you would do me a flavor here, hit the share button. Hit the share button if you would like the video, and then share the video out to your friends, to the folks you know. The whole point of this is to get more people involved in the conversation. I'd love to hear from people. We've got about 70 people in the chat room and 28 shares. So if we get another 10 or 15 shares, that would be awesome. If you're on YouTube or Twitch, we appreciate you guys out over there as well. I can see your comments. I see Jonathan's been commenting this morning, and some other folks as well. If you're on Twitch, or if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and then hit the share button as well. So we're going to have some discussions on that. Yes, Michael, we're also going to talk about the rolling of the chairs that we've been seeing in the Senate as well. Some of the crazy stuff that's going on there, including the referral to the secondary committee on the gender sports bill and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're going to talk about all that stuff with Robb Myers. So like and share. Make sure you check us out on this way, Common Sense Core. Common Sense Core. Those are the people that help bring us on the air every day. Let's get down to it. Here we go, The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Hour 2 is right now.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out themichaeldukesshow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Duke Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Ooh, baby, around the world on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator. Hi, how are you? Welcome to hour 2 of the program. We're ripping through it, the fastest 2 hours in radio. You just missed being a member of the 6 o'clock club if you're just tuning in. All you had to do was get up just a few minutes earlier, and you could have been an official member of our 6 o'clock club team who comes on board and listens every morning in the 6 o'clock hour, where we've got good stuff all the time. We finished up. Cathy Tilton was our guest, who is the the minority leader in the state house. You can go back and listen to that on the podcast, which is available wherever you find podcasts: Castbox, Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and of course Spotify. So that's what we're looking for. This hour, we're continuing now our discussions. It's all state business all the time today. Robb Myers is our guest. He is the GOP state senator from District B, as in Bravo. He's up in North Pole. Well, he's not in North Pole. He's representing North Pole. He is down in Juneau now. We're talking with him about things that are going on down there to get the straight dope on what's been going on the last couple days and what he expects to see going into the end of this session, which is only 13 days away at this point. Robb Myers, our guest. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Oh, doing okay, Michael. Ready, willing, and able to get going here.
I'm so sorry. All right. Well, and I apologize in advance for everything I'm about to say. Robb, this whole thing has just been an absolute chocolate poo parade from the very beginning. But now we're coming down into the nitty-gritty. This week, of course, discussions revolved around SB 199. I want to talk about the budget. I want to talk about the omnibus portion. I want to talk about all that. But this SB 199 vote yesterday, to me, just makes me scratch my head. Here we've got a bill that not fully funds, I guess I should rephrase that. It splits the PFD out in what I would say would be kind of reminiscent of the Hammond 50-50 plan, where 50% of the earnings draw goes to the dividend and 50% goes to government. And then it changes it. It only does that for 1 year unless the legislature decides to pull up and figure out where to come up with $800 million worth of new revenue and et cetera, et cetera. This bill was on the floor yesterday. I know you guys tried to amend it for a full PFD. That didn't work. So then we moved on to the 50-50 PFD. That failed by 1 vote. And yet here we sit. So give us a rundown of everything that happened on 199. Give us the play-by-play from your perspective.
Yeah, so you gave a good summary of what the bill was originally. It was 50-50 this year, 75-25 next year, unless you get $800 million in revenue, and you got until 2027 to do that. Here was the kicker on that one. Even if you came up with $800 million in revenue, over the next, let's say next year, you still wouldn't get your 50-50 until 2027. So, we could just have those extra taxes sitting there and making bank, and we still wouldn't get our dividend.
So wait a second. So if we found $800 million in revenue, as the sponsor of the bill wants, we'd get the 50-50 this year, but then for 24, 25, and 26, we wouldn't. So they would have accrued another, $2.4 billion in excess revenues, and then we'd start paying the 50-50 again.
Bingo. I know, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
I mean, it's just painful. I mean, I didn't even get a cigarette when it was over. I mean, this whole thing is just like, I mean, wow. But this is their answer. Here's what's ironic to me, Rob. This is the answer after some stalwart senators who've been fighting for a full PFD for so long said, well, maybe we can compromise and they can come to us. And the second that they went to the whole, well, we'll do 50-50, then it was like, okay, great. Well, the 75-25 it is then. And it was like, wait a second. That's not how compromise works, man. That's not how it works.
Well, I think Roger Holland might have had the best comment on the floor yesterday. Mike Schauer likes to point out that he's got, the best of the pithy comments. And he said last year, when we were in a fiscal crisis, the solution was to cut the PFD and raise taxes. And now that we got so much money, we don't know what to do with it. The solution is to cut the PFD and raise taxes. So methinks maybe it's not our taxes and our revenue that are the problem.
Right. I mean, just let me think about that for a minute. I think maybe you might be right that this is intent. This is in I remember one of my listeners many years ago gave me a button that he'd been passing out some of these pithy buttons, and one of them says is that he said they're all in it together and they're doing it on purpose. That was what the button said, and I'm like, that pretty much sums up what seems to be going on in the legislature. They're, especially with the majority and the finance committees and everything else, they're all in it together and they're doing it on purpose. I find it ironic that these people that beat their chest about, we've got to be fiscally responsible. Oh, wait, we've got all this money? Hey, we're going to do everything, and then we're going to have $4.4 billion to play with. But we couldn't possibly pay a full PFD.
Last year when we were talking about the budget, and then we were talking about our fiscal plan, one thing that I and a number of other guys on the more conservative end of the spectrum brought up is we need a spending cap, because at some point in time, we know how this works. Everything goes in cycles. The stock market goes up, oil prices go up, what have you. At some point, we know we will be back in more money, and we have already seen what happens in this state when you get more money. You spend more money, and then it gets painful on the back end again. And what we're trying to do is prevent the painful on the back end side of it, because in order to do that, you have to prevent it from going up to begin with. So there's 4 or 5 different spending caps that have been introduced. I've got one of them. Right. And, I spoke about it on the floor a couple of weeks ago when the budget came over from the House. And I said, we need a spending cap. So last year, as we're talking about our fiscal plan, there are a number of the less conservative legislators, let's just say, that said, we don't need a spending cap. The POMV cap is our spending cap because we can't spend more than that. Well, we see how well that's working now.
Look, Rob, we already saw the supplemental budget come out of the Senate, right? And it was already $600 million more for this year than we'd already planned for. And then the House just dropped their bomb out on everybody. Now we're talking about a $1.4 billion supplemental
other way
budget.
around.
Or I'm sorry, is it 1.6 and 1. What? It's
no. It's so the House had the $600 million and the Senate bloated it up to 1.4.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. I got it backwards there. But we start looking at this and we're like, wait a second. And you're going to forward fund $1.2 billion in spending, and you're going to do this. You're going to do all the bells and whistles, fund all your programs. But I'm sorry, we couldn't possibly pay the statutory PO. And I have to laugh when they say, well, we've already got the POMVs there. We can't exceed it. It's a statute. You sure as hell can exceed it. You've broken the statutes any way you want. And the irony of this whole SB 199 thing is that even if it goes into law and they decide, well, it's still a statute.
Yep.
If we jump through all the hoops, got the $800 million, they started paying out the 50-50 in 2027, and there was some kind of stock market crash or something else, I mean, then they'd be like, well, we really can't afford it. Sorry.
Right.
So we're just gonna. I mean, this is insane.
Yep. No, absolutely. And that's a good segue into what I tried to do with my amendment, and then Roger Holland with his amendment. So my amendment was pay a statutory dividend this year, because obviously we've got the money. Start with a 50-50 next year, and it's 50-50 in perpetuity, but it's contingent on passing a constitutional amendment to protect it. If you don't pass the constitutional amendment, then it goes back to statutory. So if you want us to compromise, let's actually compromise, and let's get this thing finally solved so that we can't touch it again in the future. Otherwise, we're going to be back here having the same debate in a couple of years. And it's been so much fun for 6 years. Let's do it even further for the next 20.
I mean, at some point, Rob, some of us on the outside looking in, at some point we just kind of go, throw your hands up in the air and go, I'm going to go have a glass of wine. We've been fighting this battle now for going on nearly 6 years now, so almost going into 7 years over the whole PFD thing. Right. It sucks up all the oxygen in the room every legislative session since then. And it comes back to me that I realize that, we keep saying it needs to be fixed, and yet nothing happens. And I'm starting to realize that this is like the whole wrestling with a pig scenario where you both end up covered in pig crap, and then you realize that the pig enjoys it. This is, I think, in some ways, this is what they want. They thrive on this chaos because it allows them to do things that it's an artificial crisis that they manufacture every year. And they're like, well, now we can do things that we couldn't do before.
Well, you look back historically and you realize that crises tend to breed strong men. So if somebody wants to be a strong man, this is a good way to do it.
Yeah. Well, and I think we can point that right to the Senate Finance co-chair. Bert Stedman has been the architect of the budget for many, many years, and he's very much a member of the politician club where I know better than you, it seems like, seems to be the answer at every opportunity. And now we're seeing even more of that. Now let's first of all, I guess we should get into and talk about for just a hot second the capital budget. We just were talking this morning a little bit about what's coming in the capital budget, and I'm all for reducing the budget. Don't get me wrong, but if you are going to have a capital budget, you should at least have some equitability in that. We got the fastest growing region in the state, the Mat-Su, getting only 2% of the capital budget, and then we've got the peninsula, which is it's growing, and it's probably one of the reddest districts in the state. Both the Mat-Su and the peninsula could probably be neck and neck on that, and it got 0%. I mean, at what point do we look at this and go, well, that really looks kind of punitive?
Yeah, and the strange part about the peninsula one, now the Valley, I could, coming out of who's in charge of the finance committees on both sides, I could somewhat understand why the Valley happened because, well, they're not exactly friends with the Valley legislators. The peninsula is a little bit more surprising because you got two senators representing the peninsula, and they happen to be the Senate president and the rules chair. So that one kind of makes me scratch my head a little.
Right, exactly. So what else happened during the discussion on this 199 as it went through here? We got about 2 minutes.
So my amendment went up, and we talked about that for a while, and then so that one got voted down 8-11. Then we moved on to Roger Holland's amendment, which was similar. It was 50-50 this year, 50-50 straight across the board, but it still had the contingency on passing the constitutional amendment. Because again, as I said on the floor, and I've been saying to people for a while, if you don't put it in the Constitution, it doesn't count. And his amendment failed 9-10.
9-10, with that final vote being cast by the guy who then immediately split the room and went out to do his fundraiser.
There's going to be a few people that are going to have to account for their votes on both of those amendments because of their support for the PFD over the years, but then not voting for that amendment.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be shocked. I mean, I'll be honest. I was shocked that Wielechowski voted against it, and that Kawasaki, who've been very vocal about their support for a full statutory PFD, and now when the opportunity came for either full or for 50-50, they both pulled the plug on it. And I mean, did they speak against it? Was it because of the constitutional language? What was the reasoning that was given on that?
So Kawasaki didn't say anything. Wielechowski spoke on the first one. I don't think he spoke on the second one. And he basically said it's statutory or bust. And so, well, we went bust. So I don't quite understand that reasoning completely. I've got my line in the sand. But again, if it doesn't include some constitutional language, it doesn't count. So I still viewed what we tried to do yesterday as better, definitely better than what was in the original bill. But that's the direction we went with it.
It's obviously, I'm sure it's very frustrating for you who are hip deep in it, but it's obviously frustrating for us as well as we watch this, because this is the fight that we've been working on for so long, and yet even in like you said. The answer when we were short of money is more taxes and cut the PFD, and the answer now is still more money and cut the PFD. And I think that shows their end game in the long run. They want no PFD and they want taxes on top of it because they want to have this kind of money to play with every year.
Yep, consolidates the power.
All right, we're going to be jumping back into this here in just a hot second. We've got Robb Myers here is our guest. He is the GOP state senator from District B up in the interior. We're going to continue with him here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. It is your home for common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Robb Myers is our guest. I forgot to fix the alarm thing here in the final thing here. Let me do this right here. Come on up. Give that to me right here. Okay, just a reminder that we're about to. We'll see if that does it. All right, Robb. Tell me what else you'd like to cover this morning, because I've got some stuff that I want to continue to talk about, obviously. But what else would you like to cover today that so that we can lead into it here, coming back onto the radio?
Well, I haven't really gone over the capital budget yet because that portion of the budget just came out on Tuesday and I haven't had a chance to go over it much. I did spend a good chunk of the weekend going over the operating budget. So we could talk a little bit about that if you like.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We could talk a little bit more about the 199 fight. That was it, because that bill, after we voted down those two amendments, we didn't pass the bill. We took the bill and we sent it back to rules to sit there. It's just, it's really, boy, I was talking to, I'd have people come up to my office, over the last few months this session and they go, well, how's the session going? And I told them, I said, it's really quiet. I'm not sure if that's because we've actually figured something out or if it's the calm before the storm. Well, I think it's the calm before the storm, and now we're getting into the storm.
Right. All right. Well, we can dive into all that. Robb, you're still, I would still consider you fairly new to the legislature, this being your first session and everything else, your first term. Tell me, what surprised you? I don't know if you expected it to be the way it is, but what's been surprising to you in the legislature as you've taken on your first term here?
Boy, I've had some singular surprises along the way. We just had a lovely little surprise on one of my bills yesterday. But surprises in general, that's hard to say. Let me just give you a little story about one of my bills yesterday. So we've got a bill. We do these little board extension bills every year, and they like to hand them out to the freshmen because we've got 6 or 8 of them. And so I picked up one of them, and we got it through the Senate. It's over on the House side, and it's sitting in a House committee right now, and they wanted to put an amendment into it on Monday. And I told them I wasn't necessarily a fan of the amendment. And the agency who it was affecting told them this is a very bad idea. And so they voted the amendment down. And so same committee had another meeting yesterday, while the Senate was on the floor, and my staff called them and said, hey, is our bill going to get heard again today, get passed out? And they said, no, we're not hearing your bill today. Well, they heard our bill. They didn't tell us it was coming. And they tried to pass the same amendment, and fortunately got stopped at the last minute because of the heroic actions of a couple of House minority members. But, just backhanded stuff like that. It's just, I do not understand it. I can understand procedural rules and you realize that everything around here is based on votes. Do you have the votes available? But to go behind somebody's back like that, at light of their face to start with, that seriously bothers me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it would damage. It seems to me that would damage a relationship. There's got to be some trust, whether it's in caucus or across the aisle. There's got to be some trust that somebody says, okay. I mean, when they flat out, if they imply it's one thing, but if they flat out say, no, I'm not going to do this, or yes, I'm going to do this, I mean, there's got to be some trust there. When that's shattered, how can you even get any work done?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything down here is based on relationships, and doubly in our case, because of how small our bodies are. We're the second smallest legislature in the country. And in that case, one person can, we've seen it, one person can sway everything. And so you have to maintain those relationships. And so to pull a stunt like that, I just go, I don't understand how people can be so underhanded. In my other job, if you tried to do something like that, you'd probably get slugged for it.
Right. Exactly. All right. Well, the bell means it's time to jump back into it. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. All right, let's continue ahead here. Robb Myers is our guest, GOP State Senator from District B. We're going to finish up our discussions on 199. We kind of got through parts of the amendment process. Robb, what happened with 199 once you guys, you put these 2 amendments out, one for a full PFD and then one for a 50-50 PFD, both of which failed, again with some surprising votes on people who were supposedly supportive of a full statutory and more. But what happened? What happened after that?
So we both of the amendments to change the structure of the bill from myself and Roger Holland failed, which is disappointing. And then David Wilson had an amendment in there to change all of the may pay out the dividend to shall pay out the dividend, which we know is going to be unenforceable because of what the court said a few years ago. But he put it out and said, well, it just shows that good faith that we're telling the people that we're going to try to stick to our word. And okay, fine. So that amendment passed. Then after that, the bill got pulled. So it got sent back to rules to sit there. What was becoming apparent is you take that bill, and regardless of how you change it, or even if you left it the way it started, it was turning into a case of there was no way to get 11 votes to pass the bill. So the only alternative to either killing the bill is to throw it back in rules, and it just sits there until such time as maybe we do come up with a compromise and can bring it back out and use it. But my guess is, especially since we've only got 2 weeks left in the session, my guess is it's going to sit there, and that's where it will remain until the end of session when it officially dies.
But Robb, this was the bill that the Senate president said was going to be the cornerstone of sound fiscal policy.
Yeah, yeah, about that. I mean, there's still some hope among a few people that we come up with some sort of a grand compromise, and I don't see that happening right now.
Right. Well, sending it to committee, sending it to rules, sounds like a good idea. But what we've seen over the last few weeks has may throw a wrench into that, because we've seen a couple times here the chairs of some of these committees getting rolled. We saw Mia Costello got rolled on HB 55 with Josh Revak and LV Gray Jackson working with some Democrats and to pull that bill out of committee, essentially for a political ploy, because there was no way it was going to pass on the floor, but he pulled it out of committee to be able to beat his chest on it. And then later on, we saw the sports gender bill be referred to a second committee over the objections of the chair and everything else. So, I mean, how dead is it really? I mean, if you've got folks out there who've learned to love Rule 48 to be able to pull it out of committee, what say you on that?
Yeah, no, I mean that's a fair point. It starts to become about this procedural stuff. It's not about the bills themselves. It's about the different pieces and the players involved and how they feel about it and how they think they can gain an advantage sometimes. And I mean, that cuts both ways. I mean, one thing that I mentioned to people a few days ago is, you got Rule 48 that can kick a bill out. Well, and you do that. You have Rule 48 there because you want to make sure that one chair just can't be completely and totally obstructionist. And, we saw that a couple of years ago. My predecessor got rolled on a bill.
Right.
And I know Mike Showers brought that up a couple of times. But at the same time, funny thing is that Rule 48 doesn't say who signs it. It'd be actually very interesting if you had the votes on the floor to refer a bill to a committee and the chair and the rest of the committee, or most of the committee, didn't actually want it. They could sign their own Rule 48 and it could get kicked out without a hearing. So, I mean, it goes both ways. Right. And it's just a question of how upfront and honest and open about the process do you want to be, and how underhanded do you want to be?
Well, I think we know which direction that's going right now as well. So SB 199 back to the Rules Committee, probably dead for the rest of this session, or this part of the session, with only, again, less than 2 weeks left on this. But I guess some political points were made, whatever's going on. I mean, the bottom line is we're going to go into next year with the PFD issue still unsolved. What does this mean for what does this mean overall for the budget, and for what PFD is the Senate going to be putting out? I know 2,500 was the number that was floated earlier. Is that the same number that remains? They're not doing an energy relief. They're just saying a straight $2,500 PFD?
Right. Yeah, that's what's in the budget right now. It's a straight 50-50 split. Surprisingly, for the first time in a few years, the PFD is actually coming out of the earnings reserve account where it's supposed to.
Whoa. Don't get crazy now.
Yeah, right. No kidding. We're going to raise expectations here. But that's what's sitting in the Senate version right now. The energy relief check, or whatever you want to call it, is not in the Senate version. Would not be surprised to see it brought back on the floor to add to it. And you call it an energy relief check, call it the other half of the 50-50 from last year. You could call it a couple of different things. But yeah, it's that's what we're sitting at right now. And I think politically speaking, I've heard comments from multiple people on both sides of the aisle that you have to do at least a 50-50 this year, otherwise the state would be up in arms.
Well, you got the Senate Finance co-chair saying, well, we paid all this stuff and we've done all these things. We put all the bells and whistles in. We're still going to have $4.4 billion to play with. Yeah, you think people will be up and that's what was said, right? I mean, I'm not making this up.
Right. Yeah. And Brad's been making the point on, you talked about the supplemental a little while ago, but Brad's been making the point on his Facebook pages that we put $1.4 billion in for a supplemental for the state, and we can't even pay out the rest of the 50-50 from last year, let alone make anything statutory for last year or this year.
Right.
And it's just nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about capital. I know you said you haven't really gotten a chance to dig into it because it just came out, but I know you've been working on the operating budget. Now, first and foremost, I guess before we go into this, we should talk about the fact that this whole thing is now getting wrapped up into an omnibus bill, which is problematic for several reasons, in my opinion. What's your thoughts on combining everything here and putting it into an omnibus?
So it's not the first time that this has happened. This is what they did last year. It's what they did in 2020. To some extent, I think the last couple of years, it was a little bit more understandable. There were timing issues, and you kind of let everybody know beforehand what you were going to do. I know it's happened in years previous too. I can't remember exactly when the last one was before 2020, but when you let everybody know kind of what's coming, and especially when you don't have a lot of money to play with, which was the case the last couple of years, then it's somewhat understandable. This year, it was sprung on everybody at the last minute. You introduce the committee substitute at the finance table, pass it out the same day, and everybody goes, wait, what? And this is what you're left with, because what it does is it cuts the House out of the capital budget negotiations. Because normally House passes the operating budget, we pass the capital budget. And, while we work on our amendments for the operating budget, the capital budget goes over to the House, and they, put their things in it and in their finance committee, or put some amendments in on the floor while we're doing the same thing with the operating budget on our side. And that's not what's happening this time. So what it means procedurally for the capital budget means if you can either accept what the Senate has done with something, or you don't get it at all. You can't put in anything extra. You can't raise what was in there. It's either if the Senate put in a project, it stays there, or if the Senate put in a project, it comes out. There's no alternative. And so it really cuts out who has any options on the decision-making process.
Right. It eliminates the ability to compromise or to be able to horse trade or do anything else at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's usually so much horse trading that happens this time of year. You can horse trade, and you can't horse trade officially between the capital and the operating, but it happens between the back room. Hey, you leave this part of the operating budget in, I'll leave your part of the capital budget in, or vice versa, and things like this. So, there's a lot of little pieces in the end game that go on, and this really severely limits the options.
And of course, again, you can't. You could. Somebody could support a capital budget, and yet be opposed to the operating budget or the supplemental, or vice versa. And now it's an all or nothing scenario. You have to vote all up or all down.
That's correct. And I've heard a couple of people make that comment, that they said, yeah, I wanted to vote for the capital budget, but I'm going to have a hard time voting for the operating budget. And then there's a supplemental, which normally we pass a supplemental basically every year, but normally that would have gotten passed around March or so, and it would have been, nothing major. We're just dealing with, we had a really bad fire year last year, or, we had a couple of, other natural disasters, or, something unexpected popped up, and now we have to pay for it. And so it's hard to vote against the supplemental most years, because in effect, it's already money that's been spent, and now the accounting is just catching up.
Right.
But the amount of cash that they're talking about, and then rolling it into the operating budget, that again is a whole other animal.
Well, yeah, because again, if you're talking about a $4.5 billion budget, and you have a $200 million supplemental, which is kind of the normal range, now you're talking about fractional percentages. But if you're talking about having a supplemental budget of $1.4 billion, again, you're going from $4.5 billion to over $6 billion in spend. That's not just a little bit. What is going on with that?
Boy, it's crazy what some of the stunts that they're pulling. Normally a supplemental is we're making up holes in the operating budget, and we're throwing in supplemental capital this time. And I just don't understand it. This is normally we leave this to the capital budget, and we figure it all out there. And this time it seems like the only reason to do supplemental capital is if you do a supplemental budget, it lets you start spending it a little bit earlier, because maybe you hit this year's construction season instead of next year's. Maybe maybe, and that's probably only on a project that's already got started last year.
Right. Well, that's my main question here, Rob. I mean, a supplemental, as you said, is usually for things that came up unexpected, earthquake, fire, things like that, things that you've already encumbered money for or spent money on, and you're just truing up the books. Are you saying that they've already spent or encumbered $1.4 billion worth of money for this year's budget, which ends in less than 2 months, and yet they're going to do it? I mean, is that the argument here?
No, I don't think so. I mean, somebody might try to say that, but there is no way that we started spending that level of cash over the last 8, 9 months, 10 months of the current fiscal year, because we didn't know this was going to come in until at least February, maybe March, as we saw the oil prices starting to creep up, and and then Ukraine happened and shot them up even higher. There's this in my mind is just one more way of hiding a little bit of where the money went. You just tangle it all up so nobody can actually sit down and figure it out.
And this might have been the reason again for the omnibus, because now you've got to vote for everything no matter what, and a supplemental is usually a guaranteed vote anyway. And so now, by wrapping it all up, nobody can complain that there's $1.4 billion new dollars that are not encumbered. That is just a way to hide it in the. I mean, this is just like voodoo economics at this point, voodoo accounting.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the level we're at.
The operating budget itself. Let's talk about that. Well, actually, we're up against the break. We're going to talk about that when we get back. I just looked up at the clock, and it is the fastest 2 hours in radio, Rob. I mean, it just happens like right now. So we're going to continue here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues with Robb Myers, GOP State Senator for District B. One final segment with him. Don't forget, coming up tomorrow, it's Firearms Friday. Chris Chang is going to be I believe is going to be our guest. If not, we'll have somebody on. It's going to be fun. But I can't wait. It's going to be TGIFF for us tomorrow. Meanwhile, Robb Myers continues with us in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now, and we've got just you and me, Rob, and 80 of our closest friends on Facebook as we continue to talk this stuff out. Going back to the whole surprise thing, I mean, were you surprised as, being a new legislator and jumping into this, never having done anything like this? Congratulations again, by the way, in defeating the incumbent. I think you were the right man for the job. But, I mean, are you as surprised as I think many people are at the dysfunction, and I think sometimes intentional dysfunction that is going on in our state legislature?
A little bit. So previous to getting elected, my little bit of experience with the legislature was back in college. And so I spent a session down here as an intern. And that was back in 2007. And as I told people last year, the big difference between 2007 and now was, one, there's a whole lot of new players. The people have changed out a lot. Not just the legislators, but actually there's been a lot of staff turnover the last few years too. The other part that was different between 2007 and 2021 was in 2007 we had money, and last year we didn't. And now we have money again. And the one crazy part is that in 2007, since we didn't have money, there wasn't a lot of fighting because you could make everybody happy. Now we have money and we're still fighting because we can't put some of these fights behind us.
Right. Well, and I think, again, this comes back to the whole argument over the PFD. And I think at this point, knowing what's going on, seeing what's happening, understanding that, we're balancing, certain things and that it's taking up an inordinate amount of time, I am fully convinced at this point, and you could tell me if you think I'm wrong or not, or I'd love you to comment if you want to. But again, I think at this point, this chaos is intentional. That they understand, again, you mentioned earlier, in a crisis, a strong man can rise. And that, I think that is exactly what's going on. They want this chaos. They want to be able to have their hand on the tiller of the PFD and be able to create this crisis and utilize all the fervor around the PFD debate to basically shield and smokescreen some of the other things that they want to do behind the scenes.
I think that's one half of it. The other half of it is, what is your vision for the state moving forward? Because, I come out of the private sector. I'm a private sector guy. I don't like large government. That's in large part why I'm a Republican. And so I get down here and I'm starting to see that it's not just a question of fighting over money. It's fighting over vision, fighting over who's in control of this state. And you saw that on the House, especially when they had their floor debates over the budget. Tom McKay, I posted this one out to social media. He had a great clip, a wonderful piece of sage wisdom. He says, at the rate we're going, if we fund our government primarily off of our endowment, which is the permanent fund, we're going to end up a trust fund with a trust fund government. The entire state can turn into a park, and we don't need a private sector anymore. And that's very concerning. Then you had during the actual budget, the actual debate over the budget itself, that Tom's comments were over a couple of the amendments. Ken McCarty stood up and said, so he's a counselor and a psychiatrist in real life, and he said, I watch what happens in domestic violence cases, and domestic violence is based on power and control, and controlling the money is a significant part of that. And what he's seeing is this is about power and control amongst the legislature over the people and the rest of the state. And it's very, very concerning when you start thinking about it in those terms.
Well, exactly. And unfortunately, it's a very small part because, again, we've changed out a huge number of the players in the legislature, but we still have that finite group that has retained control. They're in leadership. They've got the institutional knowledge and the experience, using the Mason's rules and everything else and parliamentary procedure and all these things. And they are essentially running roughshod over all the newer people who have gotten in there in a reaction from the public in changing the players that have not been doing what they want. And they continue to ignore what the overall population wants. Now, the problem is, of course, is that these are people who obviously are getting the backing of their constituency going back again and again and again. And I'm thinking of people like Stedman and Stevens and Stutz and things like that. But I mean, they're the ones that are holding the reins of power and basically dangling everybody else out to dry at this point.
Yeah, I mean, one of the downsides of having a lot of turnover is that you lose some of that institutional knowledge. And, knowledge is power. I'm trying to remember the source of the quote, but I was referencing it with somebody a couple of days ago, is that youth and vigor will never stand up to experience and guile. And, we're seeing a little bit of that in the legislature today. That's part of what's going on. It's not all of what's going on, but it's part of it.
Right. Absolutely.
And so, I mean, there's portions of that.
Okay, Robb Myers, we're going to continue here in just a second. We've got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show continues. One final segment. Let's do it. All right, welcome back. One final segment of the program this morning. Robb Myers is our guest. I was just, we got talking about something else during the break, and I've forgotten what we were talking about before we went to break. It's that kind of morning already. It's just going by lickety-split. So, Rob, I don't recall what I had asked you. We were just going to dive into it, and I think it was operating. We talked about the supplementary budget, and you were going to continue to give us the rundown on the operating budget and some of the problems that were in it.
Right. So, I mean, obviously, just the straight size of it, of course, is an issue. The size of the operating budget coming over is a problem. When it came over from the House, it was already a 7% increase over last year just on straight operating, and the Senate added a little bit more to it. And I have to go back and do the math to see the percentage on it. But, the other part that's interesting, again, going back to kind of the power and control portions, is you take a look at the money that we're throwing into savings, and we're putting the Senate portion of it is putting a good chunk of money into savings. We're putting a bunch of cash into actually the principal of the permanent fund. We're putting some money back into the SBR, the statutory budget reserve. But it's interesting to note that nothing is going into the CBR. And that is the one savings account that we are constitutionally obligated to put some money back into, and yet we're not doing it. And I think you can take a wild guess as to why.
Right, because, and for those of you in the public, in the audience who don't know, a vote in the CBR, because we got SBR, we've got CBR, we've got a various number of different accounts, but in the CBR specifically, it requires a 3/4 vote to withdraw the money from that account. The SBR is a simple majority. The ERA is a simple majority. The CBR requires a 3/4 vote, which would require the cooperation of the minority to get the money back out. And even though we owe $10 billion to that account, it's supposed to have a $10 billion balance, we still don't put money back in there because they want to have easy access and not have to cooperate with the minority at any point.
Bingo. So, the one thing that we're constitutionally obligated to do when we have some money left over is the one thing we're not doing.
So I guess my question is then, when they're ignoring the Constitution, who do we go to say, look, you're constitutionally obligated to put this, you borrowed that money, that $18 billion, a big chunk of it, the $10 billion, you borrowed that from the account. It's supposed to go back in. If you put it anywhere else, that's malfeasance. That's larceny, whatever you want to call it. That is not right. It's a constitutional violation. What's it going to take to bring that to the forefront?
Well, so we have our auditor that goes around every year and audits our books, and she came out with her audit, what was that, about 3 weeks ago or so, and told us about the problems that we have. A couple of them we're actually fixing with our budget. Back during the Walker years, there's about $200 million that was supposed to go to the permanent fund that didn't. We're sending that over, so good, we're fixing that problem. But then, I imagine our audit next year is going to come up with a few other problems as well. And at the rate we're going. That's how you bring light to it, but that's not how you fix it. You fix it either with the legislature. In theory, you could fix it with a lawsuit, but we've kind of seen how the courts have gone. They largely let the legislature do what they want to when it comes to the money. And so that goes back to, we've got one solution left, and that's called a con-con.
Right. Donna Ardwin in the chat room says the SBR balance will go into the statutory budget reserve balance, will go into the constitutional budget reserve if the reverse sweep is denied. What's your take on that right now? Again, for those of you that don't know, at the end of the session every year, all the accounts that aren't, all the money that's not encumbered or just sitting around, it gets swept into the CBR, and then it as the reverse sweep gets back out. So, and it failed last year. That was the whole lawsuit over the PCE and the Higher Education Investment Fund and everything else. And the courts have been split on that. The PCE was a separate account, so they said that could stay. But the Higher Education Fund, they said that was legit, and it got swept out. So do you think that the fight could be at the reverse sweep vote?
There could be a fight there as well. We didn't get the reverse sweep vote last year. I would be very surprised if we got it this year. I don't see how that's going to happen. The issues with the SBR getting swept, that's an interesting one to look at. That may be what it says legally, but is it going to happen that way? Again, we keep running into these kinds of problems, and it makes me wonder, looking at some of the tricks that get pulled in the budget, if that's actually how it's going to play out come July 1. And so I think it's just better for us to be upfront and say, we owe the constitutional budget reserve a bunch of money. Let's put some money in the constitutional budget reserve, instead of saying, well, we'll put it in the SBR and then it'll get swept. So we really did it, but maybe not. And
Right.
Maybe it'll go to court. Who knows?
Well, and you just mentioned the con as a solution, and I've put out my concerns about that in the past and everything else, but I think Jennifer brings up an interesting point in the chat room. She says, how does the con help when they're already not following the Constitution? I think that's got to be a fair point.
That is a fair point. That's a fair point. But here's what I look at it as is if they're not following the Constitution right now, in large part, it's because the courts have let us get away with it. And what we do is, if we get a con, is we put the language in there that the courts are going to make them follow it. You get rid of the loopholes that the courts have identified for us to allow the legislature to do these sorts of things. And really that's what it boils down to. Otherwise, what are we left with? We're left with, whoever gets the votes can do whatever the heck they want. Well, that's a very scary situation to get into. And I don't think anybody wants to go down that road.
Well, we might have to. I mean, at this point, don't we? I mean, at this point, if they just ignore the law and the Supreme Court and the state courts are complicit in part of this, whether you're talking about the Wielechowski decision or the decision on the PCE or anything else, and now we're seeing more and more of this dancing around about the difference between dedicated and designated, creating separate funds for all these different things so they're outside of the sweep so that they're constantly protected in perpetuity and everything. I mean, at some point, somebody has to go, pardon me, the Constitution says something completely different. I mean, isn't it almost inevitable at this point?
Something is inevitable. Exactly where we're going with it, I don't know yet. It's still a little murky as to what is coming in the future. But you can see something on that freight train coming. You're just not sure what the cargo is. Yeah. And yeah, I'm you mentioned the designated funds thing versus dedicated funds, and it's something that it's one of these cases of the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law in a lot of ways. And I look at the spirit of what our original constitutional convention was trying to do, is it was trying to say, make everything compete equally on an equal footing every year. And that's what we have been avoiding for the last 30 odd years, maybe longer. We stuck to the spirit of the law for the first 20-ish years of our existence as a state, and then we just start finding loopholes. And we have to have that one reason I think we need a constitutional convention is because we have to have that open and honest debate. Do we have little funds that are designated and dedicated to do certain things, or do we put everything on an equal playing field every year? In my mind, if you're going to have little funds dedicated to do certain things, you put those funds into the Constitution so that then we stop the arguments.
Right, exactly.
Otherwise,
otherwise it should be an equal playing field. That's the bottom line on that. Rob, we're down to the last minute here. I want to give you the final thoughts real quick, less than 60 seconds.
Boy, it's been a crazy year. The one thing that you learn real quick in the legislature is it's like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes. There's a lot of shenanigans that happened in the last couple of weeks. We've got something called the 24-hour rule, where once both sides have appointed the conference committee for the operating budget, then bills can start getting heard in 24 hours instead of taking a week to notice. And so things start moving really fast.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you've got particular issues that you're watching down here in the legislature, this is when everything moves really fast. Keep your eyes open.
Robb Myers, our guest. Folks, we're out of time. Tomorrow's Firearms Friday. Live well, be kind, love one another. We will see you tomorrow. The worst part about the 24-hour rule, Rob, is it's not even really 24 hours. It literally just has to be noticed the previous day. We've seen bills under the 24-hour rule that were noticed at 11 o'clock at night and heard the next morning at 8 a.m. on the floor.
Oh, yeah. No, we play fast and loose with that one.
Yeah, I mean, 24 hours is not really 24 hours. It just essentially means the day before at this point.
Right.
And we've seen bills that have come out of nowhere with 6, 7, 8 hours notice, and people are like, what? We're perfectly legal. No big deal. Just vote for the bill. That's what I mean, it's insane at this point.
Yeah, you can go from still having 2 committees left to getting passed on the floor in 3 days.
Yeah, exactly. I'm, like I said, I'm super frustrated. I'm sure you are as well. I appreciate the work that you're doing out there. Final thoughts. I'll give you the last minute or two here to sum up anything else that you may have missed or you want to hit on here. I'll give you the floor.
Boy, I mean, we've gone pretty wide ranging today, and yeah, I'm just kind of keying myself up and trying to make sure I keep my eyes open for what's coming here for the next 2 weeks, and also at the same time hoping it's only 2 weeks. We are kind of coming down to the wire in terms of being able to finish out the budget before the without having to go into special session to finish it off. And I really hope we do. We're supposed to gavel out on the 18th, and my housing's only guaranteed through the 21st. So I'm really hoping we finish soon.
Hopefully you don't have to break the bank to try or be living in a tent or your office or something when it's all said and done. Well, I hope so. But I mean, that again raises I hate to stall you here, but that raises another question of, does this fight get down into the government shutdown area? Because it's so much of a fight. I think everybody is so frustrated and wants to go out and they got campaign, do everything else. I don't think that that's a real possibility from what I'm seeing. What are your thoughts on that if we're going to approach kind of a shutdown area?
I don't think so. Even if we get close to the wire, the 18th, we've still got a month and a half to go until an official shutdown. I don't see us going that route. As you mentioned, a lot of people are going to want to get out of here to go campaign. We've got a couple of legislators that are running for Congress, and their elections is June 11th. They're going to want to get out of here. The difference between last year and this year is last year I think we had some hope that we were going to actually fix some of these long-term structural issues, and so that was what part of the fight was. This year I think everybody knows where the votes are on those, so we're not going to be trying too hard to fix those long-term issues. We're just trying to finish this year's business and get out of here and orient ourselves towards elections and towards what we can do next year.
Robb Myers, thank you, my friend, for coming on board. As always, I appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing those sound bites from yesterday. So thank you for being part of it.
You bet. We'll talk to you later, Michael. Have a good day.
All right, folks, out of time. We got to go. We will see you tomorrow for Firearms Friday, the Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.